So good evening all of you. Let's discuss today's newspaper. So first news is regarding NDPS code. So what is NDPS code? Basically, it is narcotic drugs and psychotropic substance codes. So under the NDPS Act, every state needs to set up one NDPS code, special code for NDPS cases. Now there has been a recent report of Ministry of Home Affairs which say that about 3.9 lakh cases under the NDPS Act are pending across the country. And the reason behind is that around 22 states are yet to set up special NDPS codes. So if you see further, there are about 60,000 pending cases under the NDPS Act in Punjab itself, and yet there was no special court has been set up. Kerala, it is said that around 50,000 cases are pending in Kerala. While if you look at Odisha, there are 17,000 pending cases. But still, these states are yet to establish a special code under the NDPS Act. It is said that at the meeting, the Narcotics Control Bureau made a presentation on special NDPS codes and on steps needed to fast track NDPS Act's trial. That only 65 special codes were currently functioning across India, which is a very less number given the rising number of pending cases. So all the states and UTs were asked to submit a status report to the Home Ministry on setting up exclusive NDPS codes in compliance with the Supreme Court direction. So there was a Supreme Court direction as per which every state has to set up one special NDPS code, while we see that this has not been done so. Now, setting up special NDPS codes and pushing for speedy trials is a part of the Union government's strategy to strengthen the fight against drug trafficking and substance abuse over the next 3 years. So recently, our Prime Minister also gave the message of Nasha Mukt Bharat. So under this, these kind of codes will be very handy. Now another data says that between 2004 and 2014, there were 1,70,000 narco cases, in which 1,95,000 arrests were made. And from 2014 to 2026, the number of cases registered have climbed up to 8,75,000. Now, this can be understood in both the ways. One, that the cases are rising, and second, it may also be the case that more cases are now being registered. So we can take it both ways. Now, if you look at the state-wise pendency, Tamil Nadu was found to have 15,000 pending cases and just 5 special courts. Karnataka, again 15,000 pending cases and only 3 special courts. Madhya Pradesh has 14,000 pending cases and no special courts. And so the state was asked to urgently establish 6 NDPS courts, one in Indore, Bhopal, Neemuch, Mandasur, Rewa and Singrauli. West Bengal, again 11,000 pending cases and doesn't have a single exclusive court for narcotics matters. Again, they were also asked to establish courts. Looking at Himachal Pradesh, 11,000 pending cases, again no special courts. So this is a situation. So this drugs abuse is a very big problem for the country's youth. It impacts India's economy, security, internal security, and it's a big challenge for the government. So, for speedy trial of these cases under the NDPS Act, to basically bring a deterrence, it is necessary that special courts are set up. And as such, MHA has given direction to every state where there are no special courts to set them up as soon as possible. Now let's go to the next news. So talking about the issue of drugs only, so Prime Minister has launched Nasha Mukt Yuva for Viksit Bharat Sankalp Abhiyan. So if you look at this news, so Prime Minister has launched the Nasha Mukt Yuva for Viksit Bharat Sankalp Abhiyan on Sunday. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi focused not only on keeping the youth away from the drugs, but also giving second chances to those who have been addicted. He said that the facilities such as rehabilitation centers can help them. So the focus is not only on those, basically not only to keep the youth away from the drugs, but also those who were addicted in the past. It's also about giving them a second chance. And regarding this, Prime Minister Modi emphasized on the role of rehabilitation centers. So Prime Minister says drugs give a temporary high, but they cause a long-term low in your career and family life. We must not give any form of acceptance to addiction. So he talks about the social issue that yeah, it's a temporary fun, but in the long term, it proves very counterproductive for those who are using drugs, and not just them. People people around them, they are also impacted by the drug addiction of the drug users. He urged, Prime Minister urged the parents to have open communication with their children to detect early signs of addiction. If a child gets addicted to substance, he said, parents should not hide it under the disguise of social prestige. So here the role of parents also become very important. So under our ethics paper, there are questions, or there are topics regarding the role of parents in the nurturing of child. So this is a very important message which our honorable Prime Minister has given. The role communication plays in a healthy relation between the child and the parents. So the Prime Minister said that if the parents detect some early signs, they should come out openly about it, talk openly about it, and not basically hide these points or hide these cases under the guise of basically social pressure that what the society will say. They should immediately go to the rehabilitation centers, talk to doctors, etc. So Prime Minister says seek necessary support, communicate openly with the child, and enlist the help of experts. Make an effort to help your child overcome addiction through medical assistance. So generally, what we see, parents, even if they know that their child is addicted to drugs, they try to hide this information and they try to manage it at their own level. But it is not possible. A medical assistance is required. So that's what Prime Minister says, that the parents should not hide these cases and should try to seek medical assistance as soon as possible. He also says the youth who come out fighting addictions are not weak; they are real warrior whose incredible courage is their true identity. So basically, he tries to motivate people or appreciate people who have fought this addiction and come out of it successfully. Society should respect them, embrace them, and give them a second chance. So basically, in our society, we see those people who have been drug addicts in the past as a menace to the society. So Prime Minister now urges the society also to give such addicts who were addicts in the past and who have fought this addiction successfully. He urges society to give them a second chance. Now PM Modi said enemy countries use the supply of drugs as part of the terror plans because they know that youth are the future of the country. Earning money by supplying drugs and destroying the country is the part of terror conspiracy, he said, addressing over 1 crore people who had joined virtually over 28,000 locations. So Prime Minister says that it's a conspiracy by enemy countries, whereby they supply drugs, from that they earn money, that money, the drug money, they use it again, which is also called a dirty money, which they use for spreading terrorism in the country. And not only that, by making the youth addict of drugs, they are in a way destroying the future of the country. So it's not just a domestic issue. There are foreign hands basically responsible for this. He asked the youth to take a pledge against substance abuse, urging them to also disseminate the message of drug free across schools, colleges, and communities. So now he talks about the role of the youth, that youth should basically first they have to take a pledge that they will not be using substance anymore, and should spread this message in around their basically vicinity. So today, as the nation has set the goal of Viksit Bharat, it is imperative the country's youth remain physically and mentally fit, brimming with self-confidence, and permanently steer clear of destructive habits like drugs. So the Prime Minister says that for India to develop, it is very important that the youth of this country also develop, and staying away from drugs is a very important step towards it. So basically, Prime Minister, he has outlined campaign's 100-week roadmap. He detailed how the coming Sundays will be feature dedicated activities spanning art, culture, sports, and meditation. The coming 100 Sundays will absolutely become 100 steps in the direction of a completely drug-free India. So as a part of this abhiyan, So there will be every Sunday some presentations will be made regarding art, culture, sports, and meditation, basically to motivate the youth to stay away from drugs. So this is the second news. Let's go to the third one. So the third news is regarding an author, Mrs. Taslima Nasreen. Now she has pitched for UCC in India. Now what is UCC? So UCC basically stands for Uniform Civil Code. Civil Code. Now Article 44 of the Constitution. Article 44, which is part 4 of the Constitution and is a DPSP, Directive Principle of State Policy, basically urges the state to strive towards Uniform Civil Code. Now what is the meaning of Uniform Civil Code? See, there are two kinds of laws in this country. One is your criminal law and other is your civil law. Civil law. So criminal laws are uniform across the country. Meaning, if a person, let's say, sitting in Nagaland commits a crime, and a person, let's say, sitting in Kerala commits the same crime under the similar circumstances, both will get the same punishment. Why? Because the criminal laws are uniform across the country. But if we talk about the civil laws, now what are civil laws? Civil laws are basically laws regarding family, inheritance, marriage, property, divorce, etc. These are called civil laws. The laws, the civil laws are not uniform across the country. Not just geographically, across within the same geography, different communities have different civil laws for themselves. So having a common civil law is called Uniform Civil Code. So that's what Madam Taslima Nasreen, she is pitching UCC in India. When we know that certain states in India, they have already gone for UCC. For example, Uttarakhand has already adopted UCC in the state of Uttarakhand. Similarly, Assam has also proposed UCC in the state of Assam. But there has been no centralized UCC in India. Still, different communities have their different civil laws. So that's why Madam Taslima Nasreen pitches for UCC in India. So what are the benefits of UCC? So number one benefit will be national integration. With the same country, people living under different laws does not create that kind of bonding. So if you have common law for all the people of this country, it will lead to national integration. And second most important fact is women empowerment. Women empowerment. In different religions and different communities, women have been given a secondary status compared to men. But if there will be uniform civil code made by the government, then the position of women can be improved and that will lead to women empowerment. So these are the 2 points which are in favor of your uniform civil code. However, there are points against it also. Now different communities have different laws and those communities are attached to their respective laws. So bringing a top down change, basically forcing people to adopt to a new set of laws in their personal lives, might lead to resistance. So it is very important for the government to first create an acceptance towards UCC, and that can be done with the help of dialogue, communication with different communities. So this is about UCC and what Madam Taslima Nasreen has pitched UCC for India, and she has also said that even Bangladesh and Pakistan also need UCC. So first, let's see when the government of India tries to adopt UCC. Now it is a DPSP, so that's why it is not legally justifiable. Means non-implementation of UCC, people cannot move to court. Now this is the main difference between Part 3 and Part 4 of the Constitution. If Part 3 is not implemented, because Part 3 is justiciable, people can go to court. Part 4 DPSP is non-justiciable in nature. Its implementation depends upon the government. Whenever the government will have the resources or the might, government might implement UCC. So we'll have to wait and see when the government goes for the UCC. Now let's go to the next news. Now one news which is very important is regarding the landslides. Now we have seen in the last week there was a landslide in Kerala. Now the question comes, why Kerala is particularly vulnerable to landslides? So let's look at basically we will read the article and try to explain it. So 2 years after the devastating Wayanad landslide, exceptionally heavy rain triggered fresh landslides, mudslides, and flooding across parts of Kerala on Saturday. So 2 years ago also there was a landslide in Wayanad area of Kerala, and again this has happened because of heavy rainfall. The IMD, which is the Indian Meteorological Department, said that widespread rainfall was likely over Kerala on Sunday and Monday, with heavy rainfall in isolated places and strong winds with up to 40 to 50 km per hour speeds. So the prior warning regarding the heavy rain was already given by the IMD. Neetha K. Gopal, the head of IMD's Meteorological Center in Thiruvananthapuram, told that intense spell was being driven by offshore through extending from the South Gujarat coast to Kerala, strong southwesterly winds across the Arabian Sea, and a strong north-south pressure gradient along the west coast. So, what are the reasons for basically your strong winds? So, as per the IMD, the reason is the strong southwesterly winds. So, if you look at this is India. So, these are southwesterly winds. These are the southwesterly winds. So when they flow over this region, they collect huge amount of moisture from the Arabian Sea, which leads to huge rainfall. Now this was not rainfall confined to one or two places, it was a widespread heavy rainfall. She added that a large quantity of rain had fallen within a short period, leaving the little time for the water to drain away. So there was a huge amount of rainfall within a very short period of time. So generally, if the time duration is extended, so the water gets drained away. But within a very short span of time, there was a very large heavy rainfall, basically leading it did not give time for the water to get drained away and leading to landslide. It was cumulative effect of the preceding rainfall combined with today's intense and widespread rainfall. So citing the reasons for landslide, she said that the rainfall which has been happening in the past also, plus this heavy rainfall in a very short duration, they combine to let this landslide happen. So now the question is, why landslides occur? So landslides are natural disasters that occur mainly in mountainous terrains with conducive soil, rock, geology and slope condition. So basically what happens, if this is a mountain, so basically movement of soil or rock from the mountain to the top, this is called a landslide. A sudden movement of rock, boulders, earth or debris down a slope is called a landslide. So what is landslide? It's a sudden movement of rock, boulders, earth or debris down a slope. Now while they are fairly common, landslides are extremely hazardous and pose a threat to human and animal lives, damaging property, roads and bridges, disrupting communication lines and snapping power lines. So they are common. Whenever there are heavy rainfall like this happen, landslide can be seen. But these landslide cause huge loss to both man and property. Like infrastructure is destroyed, communication lines are disrupted, power lines are disrupted. Now landslides generally result from a combination of two set of factors. So what are the factors? Number one, conditioning factors such as soil topology, rock, geomorphology and slope angles among others make some part of the country more vulnerable to landslide. So the slope out here, the kind of soil we find here, the kind of rock we find here, these enable landslides. And depending upon the kind of soil, the kind of slope, certain areas of the country are more vulnerable compared to some other areas of the country. And one of the example is Kerala. Now Kerala, because of its slope, the soil quality, the rock quality, it's more vulnerable to landslide compared to other regions. Triggering factors which include intense rainfall, anthropogenic activities such as haphazard land use, unscientific construction and large scale destructions of forest. So see, already the boulder is loose, already the boulders are loose. Okay? Now there are certain factors which trigger it, which is like intense rainfall. So whenever intense rainfall happen, these boulders are driven down. Then there are anthropogenic activities like man-made activities like cutting of trees, construction on the slopes, basically haphazard land use, doing agriculture on the hilltop. So these reasons trigger landslides. Most landslides in India are rain induced events. So most of the landslides which we see in India are because of intense rainfall. Other natural causes include earthquake, snow melting, and undercutting of slopes due to flooding. So, most common reason for landslide is intense rainfall, while some other important reasons are like earthquakes, like earthquake. Of course, when earthquake happens, this area shakes and boulders come down. Snow melting, whenever the snow melts, so in snowy mountains, after melting, these glaciers they move down. They may also be caused by anthropogenic activities such as excavation, cutting of hills and trees, excessive infrastructure development, and overgrazing by cattle. Okay, so if you cut the trees, the soil becomes loose, or if you do construction activities over here, the soil becomes loose. Overgrazing, the grasses are driven out. These factors also lead to landslide, apart from natural causes like rainfall, earthquake, etc. Now, how human intervention increases risk. Now it says that Kerala's landslide risk is largely concentrated along the Western Ghats. So this is the Western Ghat of India. This is the Western Ghat of India. This part is the Western Ghat. So it says that Kerala's landslide risk is largely concentrated to the Western Ghat, especially in central and northern districts such as Idukki, Pathamitra, Kottayam, Wayanad, Kozhikode, and Mallapuram. The region's steep slope, the slope here is very steep. Geology, matlab the quality of soil, and changing land use pattern make it inherently susceptible to landslide. During spell of intense or prolonged rainfall, water infiltrates the loose soil and reaches the interface between the soil and the underlying rock, weakening the bond between the two. So like this is the rock, let's say, and here is soil. Here is soil on top. So what happened? Because of intense rainfall, what happens? Water seeps down like this, and this bond, this attachment here is, it becomes loose. It becomes loose. Now this is significant because preceding rainfall can progressively saturate slope, while a subsequent burst of heavy rainfall can add large quantity of water over a short period, increasing the runoff and likelihood of slope failure. So this bond is loosened through gradual rainfall, and whenever a heavy rainfall takes place in a short period of time, this part starts moving downward, leading to a landslide. So land use changes and human interventions have also contributed to region's fragility, with quarrying, road laying, and expansion of plantation altering the stability of slopes and human damage. So this article basically says that why Kerala is more vulnerable to landslide compared to other parts of the country is because of the intense human activity which is happening here, combined with natural factors like intense rainfall, earthquake, etc. So this is very important. And there is a topic called disaster management in our syllabus. So in disaster management, landslide is a very frequently asked question, and because landslides also in the recent past it has occurred very frequently, so landslide becomes a very important question. So now we know the factors, the reasons behind it, and of course if you basically, how can we stop landslide? So we'll have to do scientific planning whenever we are doing infrastructure creation on the mountains, and then for afforestation and other factors can be basically adopted to stop landslides happening in the mountain. Of course, you cannot stop the landslide altogether, but yeah, you can try to minimize the loss to man and property, lives and property out because of the landslide. So this is one very important topic. So one article which we shall discuss regarding the international relations is Saudi nuclear deal bars Washington's double standards. So in the last classes we had discussed that Saudi Arabia and USA have signed a nuclear deal whereby USA will be supplying Saudi Arabia with uranium and nuclear technology. So, and I told you this agreement was called 123 agreement. Based on the US law, this is called 123 agreement. US has signed this 123 agreement with India also in the past. So with this background, let's see. So it says what has emerged from the 123 agreement between the US and the Saudi Arabia departs from the template Washington has used for decades in sharing nuclear technology with allies. So the article says that this deal between USA and Saudi Arabia is different, and is different from US's attitude towards sharing nuclear technology in the past. The 2009 agreement with the UAE is still the gold standards, bound Abu Dhabi to forswear enrichment and reprocessing and to accept IAEA's most rigorous inspection regime. So in the year 2009, US had signed such an agreement with UAE, United Arab Emirates. Now in this, in that agreement, USA had taken promise from UAE that they will not enrich uranium. So enrichment uranium matlab basically removing the impurity from uranium. So basically 5% enrichment is sufficient for nuclear energy production. But if you increase the enrichment to, let's say, 60 to 70%, now this can lead to the formation of nuclear bombs. So that's why enrichment of uranium is very dangerous. And in the UAE agreement, US had basically taken an oath from UAE that they will not enrich the uranium, and they had also put all the nuclear facilities under a very strict control of IAEA. IAEA stands for International Atomic Energy Association. So this is an association which basically makes sure that none of the countries are building atomic weapon like that, etc. So in the 123 agreement with UAE, it was made like the part of the agreement was that IAEA will rigorously examine all the nuclear sites of UAE in order to make sure that the uranium in those sites are not being enriched so that they cannot form bomb. The additional protocol, the UAE now gets roughly a quarter of its electricity from nuclear power. So now it says that because of this, UAE has been benefited, and whatever energy is required in UAE, the quarter of it, matlab 25% of it, comes from nuclear energy. The Saudi agreement contains no such renunciation. So there is nothing like this in the Saudi agreement that they can't basically enrich uranium or something like a very rigorous examination by IAEA. It leaves open pending a 2-year study a black box enrichment facility on Saudi soil run by American firms but built inside a kingdom whose crown prince has said he will pursue a weapon the moment Iran gets the first. So basically there was a study, and there was a black box enrichment facility on Saudi Arabia, even though it was run by American firms, but it was inside Saudi Arabia. It was inside Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabian crown prince Mohammed bin Salman has already said that the moment Iran acquires a nuclear weapon, Saudis will also acquire it. Now, in place of the additional protocol, the deal relies on bilateral inspection framework devised by the two governments themselves. Already a retreat from the standard Washington spent half a century asking the world to accept. So basically, in the UAE agreement we saw, it was said that IAEA will examine the sites so as to make sure that the uranium there is not being enriched. But in this agreement, it is said that it is USA who will examine the sites. So it's a bilateral examination. Third party examination is not a part of it. Congress has 90 working days to review it and would need a veto proof majority to block it. Complicated by President Donald Trump's announcement the morning after the signing the deal now hinges on Saudi accession to the Abraham Accord, a condition Riyadh has registered. So now this 123 agreement, it can be blocked only by the US Congress, and it has got 90 days time. It has got 90 days time to basically block it. But one of the points which USA has put forward, that Saudi Arabia will have to first accept the Abraham Accord before the finalization of agreement, which Saudi Arabia is basically resisting. Now what is this Abraham Accord? As per the Abraham Accord, if Saudi Arabia signs Abraham Accord, so then it will have to accept Israel as a country. Till now, Saudi Arabia has not given Israel has not accepted Israel as a country. But if they sign Abraham Accord, if Saudi Arabia signs Abraham Accord, it will have to give recognition to the Israel as a legal country. The timing of this deal is not incidental. Since February, the US and Israel have waged a war against Iran that was supposed to leave the Arab monarchies of the Persian Gulf more secure than they had been in decades. Instead, the war exposed how little control these monarchies have over their own fate. So, it says about the timing of this deal. So, when in February, basically US and Israel launched attack on Iran, so it was believed that because because of the Islamic revolution, Iran has been critical of the monarchies which are ruling over Saudi Arabia, UAE, etc. And both US and Israel thought because of the war, when Iran will get basically weakened, it will make these monarchies more secure. But we know the results did not go in the direction in which it was intended. American and Israeli calculations can diverge from the interest at any moment, and when they do it, it is their security that bears the cost. Seen in that light, the nuclear deal looks less like strategy and more like compensation, an attempt to restore through reactors and enrichment options the confidence that the war itself has destroyed. So we saw during the war, Iran basically chose to attack American army locations in countries like UAE and Saudi Arabia. So the author says it seems like it is like a reassurance given by USA. The confidence which was lost during the war, now USA via this deal is trying to re-ensure Saudi Arabia via giving them nuclear technology and an opportunity to enrich it. The deal also represented an unnecessary retreat from a non-proliferation order the US helped build and for all its inconsistencies took pride in upholding for decades. So if you remember the NPT, Non-Proliferation Treaty, as per this treaty, only five countries, which were USA, USSR, now Russia, UK, France, and China, were allowed to have nuclear weapons. But seems like this this treaty is basically a retreat from the US's earlier non-proliferation treaty. In Iran, a regime that has spent 2 decades absorbing sanctions, sabotage, and war for program it insisted was purely civilian, has just watched Washington hand its rival an enrichment pathway as a reward for a signature. So Iran has been building, trying to build basically as per it is an Iranian official stance that Iran is building basically or trying to acquire nuclear technology simply for civilian purpose, means for generating electricity from the nuclear technology. But and because of that, Iran has been put under huge sanctions. In fact, Iran has now faced war also. But now Iran is seeing that its neighbor Saudi Arabia is given nuclear technology by USA and maybe a chance to enrich the uranium in future, which could be converted into a bomb also. Now, whatever argument remained in Tehran for staying short of a weapon has been weakened by a deal that treats Saudi proliferation as a matter for cooperation rather than refusal. So now there is no rationale to say that Iran cannot acquire nuclear technology. Why? Because the Saudis have been given the same technology by the USA. So whatever resistance was there from the Iran, which basically was forbidding it from acquiring nuclear technology, that resistance has now gone. A Gulf and a Persian plateau, both edging towards weapon capability, carries its own consequence for Israel, whose military advantage has rested for half a century on precisely the nuclear monopoly this deal begins to erode. So Israel has been the most powerful country in that region of the world. Why? Because since long, very long, or till today also, Israel is the only country in the region which has a nuclear weapon. But now, via this deal, if Saudis are also able to make their weapon, and if Saudis do, the Iranians will also try to do the same. Now, this will erode the superiority which Israel had in the region. And Israel that senses that advantage narrowing has every incentive to reach for preventive strike, much as it did in February, raising the possibility that the war meant to settle Iran's nuclear question becomes the opening skirmish in a longer campaign it can no longer confine to one country. So it says that if Israel basically sees a threat that countries like Saudi Arabia or Iran are about to make a nuclear weapon, it can launch a preemptive strike also, basically destroying their nuclear facility, which will further engulf the region into spirals of war. Now there is finally no the question Washington has declined to ask Saudi with anything like the rigor it applied to Tehran. The claim that this program answers a genuine electricity shortfall sits uneasily with the fact that country making it holds among the largest petroleum reserve on earth and some of the finest solar resources anywhere, resources that could meet Saudi power need for a generation without a gram of enrichment. So the argument that Saudi Arabia requires nuclear technology for electricity shortfall does not sit very well with logic. Why? Because Saudi Arabia has the largest reserve of petroleum on this planet, one of the largest reserves, and also it has huge area from where it can produce solar energy. So the argument that it requires nuclear technology for electricity does not sit well with logic. Now, these are the questions Washington put to Iran for 20 years. So, when Iran was saying basically that we need nuclear technology for electricity, the argument which US used to give, that you have so much oil and you have so much empty space for producing solar energy, you don't need nuclear technology just for electricity. The same questions have not been put forward to basically Saudi Arabia. Applied to Riyadh, the skepticism collapsed just as readily, yet nobody in this administration seems inclined to voice it. A non proliferation policy that interrogates one capital's motive while waiving another's through a signing ceremony is a test of loyalty rather than intent. So basically, it shows the double standards which US is showing towards Iran and Saudi Arabia. While both the countries need, as per official stance, need a nuclear technology for electricity generation, but on one country so much restrictions and sanctions have been put, while other has been given it freely by USA, basically raises doubt over the intention of USA. So that's all for today's newspaper analysis. We'll meet tomorrow again. Thank you.